Well, hello there. Welcome into a Wednesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app, of course, is sponsored by Diversus Health. Mental health and well-being for all. And yes, it will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics over the course of the program, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this Wednesday. You could call or text them in at 719-247-1313, or you can hit me up on X at Gingerly Tweets. Yesterday, I will acknowledge, was pretty heavy on the Nuggets. I had a few things on my mind when it comes to them in this series they have against the Clippers, and today we'll kind of swing the other way a little bit. How about some Avs discussion? Chris McFarland, the Avalanche general manager, met with the media after practice, and let's get the Gabe watch out of the way early. Gabriel Landeskog out on the ice today at practice. He was wearing a green jersey, which signifies he is a third liner, which is exactly where I think he should be. You put him and Colton on either side of Charlie Coyle, and that's your third line. So the vision for Gabriel Landeskog certainly coming into focus a little bit here. And Chris McFarland very much towed the same line that Jared Bednar has, saying with Gabriel Landeskog is literally day by day. The next thing, how does he do? He did well. Okay, it's the next thing. And I have no problem with it. I think that if you gave them truth serum, they're like, yeah, he's coming back. But they're not going to do it. They're not going to give us all what we've been waiting to hear. We will just have to wait till the day of whatever game he's coming back. That's when it will be. And again, there's the rumor out there is that they're going to start playing on Saturday. We'll finally find out tonight late, because we got to figure out who's going to get in the last playoff spot in the East, whether it be Montreal or Columbus. And then once that's decided, the whole field is set, NHL will push out the schedule. So there's the Gabriel Landeskog of it all. Want to get into the bigger picture, though, with the Dallas Stars, and I can't help but feel like, and I feel even more emboldened in this, having listened to Chris McFarland today, that when he makes the moves that he made, that he's thinking about a series against this Dallas team. Some of the things he mentioned as being the reasons for all the moves this year, almost completely remaking the team on the fly. Defense, depth, winning in different ways, especially at the net front. He mentioned all of those things as being motivations for making the moves that he did. And I look at the Dallas Stars and I say that's why you make the moves that you do. And I was leaning this way yesterday, and I will 100% say I believe that the winner of this series is going to go to the Stanley Cup final. The more I think about it, the more I look at the rest of the Western Conference, I think this is it. And it just highlights how dumb it is that they have to play in the first round. This should be the Western Conference final. This should not be the first round. And Jared Bednar talked about it. I don't think he loves it. I don't think Pete DeBoer loves it. I mean, make no mistake, the Dallas Stars are looking like we got to play these guys right away. And vice versa. I don't think Dallas or Colorado wants to play each other. I think they think that this series should take place a couple of rounds from now. It is a major flaw of this system that Dallas and Colorado are playing right away. Major flaw. This series should be played out on the biggest stage it possibly can be. In the first round, there's so much else going on. I think this series elevates over all of them. I think this is the most intriguing first round series. But there's going to be a lot of hockey played around it. And it should be the focal point. It should be it should be played on opposite days of the Eastern Conference Final. But we're getting it now, and my least favorite phrase, but I use it all the time anyway. It is what it is. So back to the Stars. When you talk about depth, I think you have to first talk about the Dallas Stars. Wyatt Johnson is a third liner on this team. I don't even have to go through all the other names. Wyatt Johnson, who did a fair amount of damage against the Colorado Avalanche 1 year ago in the playoffs, is on their third line. Robertson, Hintz, Rantanen, Granlund, Duchesne, Sagan, who the Stars announced is back. So they have their own guys that they're trying to welcome back. And even on the line with Johnson, or at least who I would figure to be on a line, that third line with Wyatt Johnson, Evgeny Dadonov, who is routinely a 20-goal scorer in the NHL. Dallas is about as deep of a team as there is in the NHL. And they are a very difficult team to play against. All that stuff, depth, winning in different ways, defense, all of the things that Chris McFarland hit on today as being the reasons why he made all the moves he made this year. That's how you describe the Dallas Stars. And that's also how you describe how Dallas beat Colorado last year. I mean, that was the team that ended the Avs season. So you think about that. That's the series that you replay in your mind and go, okay, what could have been different? What could we do differently? How could we be different? And Chris McFarland thinks he figured out a way. By not just trading Mikko Rantanen, again, that was just the start here. Well, the start was the goalies, but then it was the Mikko Rantanen deal to get Natchez, but they also get Drury. And I keep saying, I think the most significant addition outside of probably Brock Nelson that occurred around the deadline, we can't diminish how important adding Charlie Coyle is. Because there's a world here where Casey Mittelstadt is the third line center. Let's say that Chris McFarland wasn't able to get a deal done. And now you have a guy that's not really built to play on a third line. As talented as Casey Mittelstadt is, he doesn't fit. And I think it's such an underrated move that Chris McFarland made to add Charlie Coyle. Because it gives that third line the identity you want a third line to have. And now potentially you're going to add Gabriel Landeskog to that line, which would bring some of that identity there. And in an interesting way, as much as I'm trying to lower the expectation about what Gabriel Landeskog can bring, because I think you're just setting yourself up for disappointment if you're expecting Gabriel Landeskog to be the player he was a few years ago when the Avs hoisted Stanley Cup. I don't think he's going to be that. Ever? That's to be determined. In these playoffs, he's not going to be, I don't think. But in a weird way, having him on the third line actually puts him in a very important role on this team. Because in order to beat the Dallas Stars, I think that the Colorado Avalanche have got to depend on three lines. I think they have to be comfortable with three lines. And I don't know that they were last year in the series against Dallas. I think the depth of Dallas certainly was a big reason why Dallas won that series. So it's not to say that the third line is going to ultimately decide the series. I just think it's almost a prerequisite for the Avs going in that they got to be able to trust three lines because Dallas does. Setting aside Miro Heiskanen, obviously, because he's a defenseman. Dallas can count on three lines. They're going to roll three lines. Avs got to be able to do the same. Because this is a series that, just like last year, I know a couple of the games got a little bit lopsided. But for the most part, it was a nip and tuck marginal difference between these two teams. So everything that Dallas brings to the table, the Avs need to be able to counter, need to have their version of it, right? They have Jake Ottinger. Yes, he's better than Mackenzie Blackwood, but certainly the Avs believe that Blackwood will give them a better chance in this series than Alexander Georgiev did last year. If the Dallas Stars are going to roll three lines, the Avs got to roll three lines. There just aren't enough. There's not enough room here in this series to go, we'll just concede this completely. Like, we got two lines. That's good enough. Not in this series. Not in essentially what could be a Western Conference final in round one. The depth matters. The goaltending matters. The special teams matters. Every little bit matters. So I think even though Gabriel Landeskog is going to be in a lesser role than he was the last time he played for the Colorado Avalanche, he's still being put in an important spot. Because the Avs have to count on good play. I don't know if it has to manifest itself in goal scoring, but you got to be able to throw out a third line that you feel good about. And to me, the best third line, understanding that Gabriel Landeskog is probably going to be put in there. I don't know completely what to expect from him, but he's going in there. You just, even if you have your reservations about the whole thing, you have to concede that he's going to be in there. But you love the addition of Charlie Coyle. And you have Ross Colton. Pretty good third line winger that you're throwing into the mix as well. But the margins in this series are going to be so small. And going off of what Chris McFarland was talking about today, you had two games in that series that went to overtime. One into overtime, one into double overtime. You had two other games that were a one-goal game in the last 5 minutes of regulation. So you had four games in that series, 4 of the 6 that were super tight. And ultimately what happened is that the Colorado Avalanche couldn't find the different ways to score, or couldn't find it, right? Giving them enough different ways to try and score, I should say. Right? For a long time, the perception of the Colorado Avalanche is they can beat you with speed, they can beat you with skill, with Mikko Rantanen's ability to snipe goals. But are they a team that's going to get into the dirty areas? Are they a team that can bully you into a goal? Because, and you know this as well as anybody, the Avs can get cute sometimes. As teams with a lot of skill tend to do, they get a little bit cute because they're so confident that they will be able to overwhelm their opponent with skill. And what Chris McFarland wanted to see was a team that had more personnel to be able to get into those dirty areas, to push around Dallas and not be pushed around, and be able to maybe find that goal. Because you don't, in a series like this, you just never know. You never know how that goal that's ultimately going to swing the series or decide the series. You don't know how it's going to happen. And if you're only competing one way with a lot of outside shooting, trying to beat people off the rush, things like that, you're not giving yourself every opportunity to score the goals, because if Mackenzie Blackwood holds up his end of the bargain, this may not be a high-scoring series. It's certainly going to be close, whether it's high-scoring or not. You got to have enough personnel, and the Avs, in Chris McFarland's mind, had plenty of skill guys. They needed some more grit and sandpaper. Brock Nelson, who kind of is skill, but grit and sandpaper as well. Charlie Coyle. Now you're adding Gabriel Landeskog back into the mix. But the last thing I'll say here, and we can continue the conversation about the Avs and the Stars series, I can talk about how important depth is. And it's going to be important. But ultimately, your stars got to be your stars. No pun intended. And we can't lose sight of, as much as Chris McFarland wants to calm everyone down, and he certainly tried his level best today to do that, the Avs are not winning this series if Val Nichushkin goes MIA again. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to belabor a point. I'm not trying to bring up bad memories, okay? But it's happened twice in consecutive seasons, okay? We can't ignore the Val Nichushkin angle here. A lot of what went into the Mikko Rantanen trade was the idea that Valeri Nichushkin, in some ways, is more vital to the success of the Colorado Avalanche than Mikko Rantanen is. And having Valeri Nichushkin means that they can maybe sacrifice some off the top by getting a player that's pretty talented in Marty Necas, but isn't Mikko Rantanen, while adding a depth piece in Jack Drury. A lot of this is centered around Valeri Nichushkin. And when you talk about being able to bully other teams, to get into the dirty areas, to score those goals, Valeri Nichushkin can do that. And Chris McFarland today said that he has the utmost confidence in Valeri Nichushkin and how far he's come. And I hope he's right. I hope this is unnecessary I'm not really speculating anything, but unnecessary worry. But it's happened twice. And there's a reason why that proverb about fooling somebody does not have a third time. What happens who's the shame on? Because normally you don't get to a third chance. Valeri Nichushkin has it. He has to take advantage of this. He has to make it right, and he can make everything right. And I know he's dealing with his own personal demons, and I'm not trying to say that he has to put the Avalanche above his own mental health or anything like that. But some part of him has to feel like he owes it to the organization. To be available, to be there, to be locked in, to be a difference maker, because he can be. As I can talk about depth, and I can talk about goaltending, and I can talk about a play or two in that series that went one way or another that ultimately decided it. You know what the big swing was. You knew the thing that essentially took the Avs out of it. That can't happen. Or else all this other stuff I'm talking about, the return of Gabriel Landeskog, depth, goaltending, Nathan McKinnon, it doesn't matter because we've seen it for 2 years straight. It doesn't happen if history repeats itself for a second time. This time of year, your best players got to be your best players, and the Avalanche have clearly signaled that outside of McKinnon and Makar, their most important player is Valeri Nichushkin. They must have him, or none of this other stuff works. Take your thoughts on Av Stars, 719-247-1313. Coming up next, I had an inkling the other day when I mentioned this at the end of the show that this may become a bigger story. This whole jersey retirement of, let's call it what it is, specifically Shedeur Sanders and getting his jersey retired, his number retired. It's become a big story. And we'll talk about it next here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. We are just one day away from being a week away from the NFL draft. That's the way we count it down because we're looking so much forward to it. We want it to be closer than it might be, but just over a week, the NFL draft will happen, and there will be 200 some odd college players that will realize their dream of being drafted into the NFL. My next guest knows something about that process, and I certainly appreciate him taking time to join me. He is an NFL agent with more than 3 decades of experience, of course. Folks around here know the name Craig Doman, and we'll talk about the pro football camp that he and Teddy put on a yearly basis. But Craig, appreciate the time. How you been?
Hey, Ryan, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing amazing, and I appreciate you taking the time. So, for what you do, what is this last week to 10 days to 2 weeks when it comes to somebody who's representing one of these young football players, and then also knowing these players the way that you do? What are the prospects kind of going through at this stage of the game?
It's a great question, and it's not the same for the 16 guys that are getting invited to Green Bay. Those guys are just hoping not to slide into day 2. When they go to bed on Thursday night next week, they want to have their name called, and there's a strong possibility that 1 or 2 of those guys is going to, go through the entire festivities, get their hopes up, be told by the league that they're going to probably get picked. They decide to bet on themselves and show up in Green Bay, and they're going to go to bed on Thursday night without a team. And then you've got guys, all the way down, different tiers, different guys are going through different situations. You can go from the top, that's the top guys. It's just a matter of when. They're going to get picked. It's just by who. And if they're a top 3 or top 4 pick, they probably already know who's going to pick them. But if they're just a first-round guy, they could go, 17. They could go 31. They could go in day 2. And then you have guys that are on the bubble to maybe get picked or not get picked. And I feel like emotionally it's tougher on those guys because their dream either happens or it doesn't. And nobody wants to be Mr. Irrelevant until there's only, this year there happens to be 257 picks. Once we get to 257 on the clock, everybody that hasn't been picked wants to be Mr. Irrelevant. So it's a wide spectrum of what's going on.
How much information do agents give their players at this time? Because I would imagine that by now, we suffer information overload right now. We've talked ourselves in and out of about 35 different players to go to the Broncos, and we're hearing the Giants and the Browns want to do this. No, they want to do this. Now they're back to doing this. I would imagine one of the most important things as an agent is filtering the information and maybe not giving out a lot of information at this time.
Well, here's the thing. There's a couple. The most important person is the client. And you've got to protect the client because you can inadvertently tempt them around. You can get his hopes up. And, I've had, Andy Reid, when he was all the way back in Philadelphia, told one of my guys on a pre-draft visit, hey, you're going to go in the first round. And so that was the last time I went to a player's house on draft weekend because I wanted to be there when he went in the first round. And he was a defensive tackle out of Nebraska. Long story short, the Eagles took a defensive tackle, but they didn't take my guy. And he fell to the 3rd round. So I had mom, dad, he had 2 big brothers looking to me pick by pick until he was picked. What happened? Why hasn't my brother been picked? Why hasn't my son been picked? And honestly, it's just a coach innocently telling a kid, we like you a lot. We think a lot of you. We think you ought to be drafted in the first round, but we don't know if you will or won't be drafted. So I think the most important function right now is protecting the player from unrealistic expectations. And if you don't do that, like even if you look at the mock drafts, there's at least 100 to 120 guys right now that are projected to go in the first round. There's only going to be 32 on Thursday night.
Craig Doman.
A lot of young men. Yeah.
Yeah. No, finish your thought. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there.
No, I just got a lot of kids are going to be pissed off. They're going to be upset. They had their party on Thursday night, not on Saturday to celebrate after they got picked on Thursday or Friday. No, they had their party. They have their party on Thursday night, and they ultimately end up leaving their own party, going for walks, going for drives, locking themselves in their room, and do not want to talk to anybody in their family or their friends. They're embarrassed, and that's the thing that we don't see.
How much? I know that there's always misdirection that goes on throughout this entire process, but I'm curious in your experience, if there is a stage of the lead up to the draft where you can kind of take some of what's being reported seriously, is it closer to the draft or earlier? Because I kind of feel like teams are throwing out their last minute smoke screens at this point, and we probably shouldn't take any note of anything that's being discussed right now.
Well, here's the thing. You're right. Closer to the draft, there's more smoke screens. But here's what you don't see. You don't see that the organization, let's just take the Broncos. The George Payton, Sean Payton, the coordinators, they have to get on the same page. And a lot of times they're not on the same page. The defensive coaches want the defensive guy to be picked in the first round. Obviously, the OC wants the offensive guy. Sean Payton's looking out for the benefit of the entire organization. Sean Payton is looking long-term. George Payton's looking long-term. Sean Payton's trying to win this year. So when you got that dynamic going on, there's not even a consensus sometimes in the building. And so these smoke screens are just to let other teams know, hey, we just want to keep our options open. And in talking to GMs over the years, typically what they do is they'll get it down to 3 guys. They'd be ecstatic if they get any of these 3 guys. And of course, if you're picking 30th or 20th, you're not thinking you're going to get a top 3 kid. But in that area, you're looking for 3 guys that you think fit. And then, as the draft unfolds and 2 of those guys are gone, that's when it gets interesting. That's when you see trade ups. Why would you trade up? You like 3 guys and they're all still available. So Kansas City's made a history of trading up a lot lately. They traded up to get Mahomes. They traded up to get Worthy. The bottom line is you don't trade up unless that's your guy and you don't want anybody else. But if you sit there and you like 3, now you can have your internal argument for a few minutes, and then head coach or GM, depending on who's running the show and the particular team, makes the call.
Craig Doman, longtime NFL agent, my guest, pro football camp that he and Teddy Doman run every year. It's an amazing event, and I want to talk about it. A couple more insider tales, if you'll indulge me, Craig. What was the bet? You talked about kind of the downside of the draft and guys, and we remember, the Aaron Rodgers and the Will Levises, but even to your point, there are guys that have to wait much longer than even those guys. But what about the flip side? What was a draft story from one of your guys that you look back on with the fondest of memories?
Barrett Robbins, the center for the Raiders. He went AWOL in the Super Bowl in San Diego. He had some mental issues later in his career. But when he came out of TCU, we thought he was going to go in the 5th round. We talked to teams, he's a third-day guy, 5th-round guy, and he was picked in the 2nd round. He was a day 1, game 1 starter. And he wasn't even he wasn't even having a party. He wasn't even at home. He didn't think he was getting picked until day 3. And so that's the rare situation. Have had that happen a handful of times. but most of the time it's the sliding that happens.
Have you thought about in the last year or so maybe changing careers and becoming an NIL agent in college?
I got drug into that this last year. I've got a CU buff now, tight end, came from a D2 school. He's making more money than most of us, just playing football for CU.
How is that world? I mean, obviously, right now we hear coaches and stuff talk about how out of control it is, but is it as much chaos as it has been made out to be right now?
I think it's worse than people realize. It's worse. One of my former employees works for an ACC school, and he's in charge of the entire NIL program. And he texted me the other day saying, "Hey, do you know this guy?" And it's another agent, happens to live in Colorado. And he's a good guy. And he goes, what do you know about him? And what do you think of him? And he's asking for some ridiculous money for one of our players to stay. And I responded back, "Hey, agents always shoot for the moon." I mean, that's what we're supposed to do. Shoot for the moon, right? And secondly, they signed a quarterback because they wanted a quarterback for like $4 million. So what do you expect the agents that represent the other players going to do? Oh, this school's now got, they've won the lottery. They're going to pay everybody. So I'm seeing a decided disadvantage by the universities, because even though they're adding GMs to their portfolio of people, they haven't hired negotiators. And so the players and the agents are killing them right now. And we're going to have a squeeze on July 1st when we go to a salary cap and a revenue share. And it's supposed to be like $20.5 million per team.
Mm-hmm.
And the schools that have been paying more than that can't pay what they've been paying. That's where you're going to see a very interesting dynamic.
Well, it's going to be what's happening with the Tennessee quarterback is going to happen all over the place, right? I mean, that's
sad. That's sad.
Yeah.
That's sad. Yeah, the Tennessee, when I saw that, I'm like, college football is no longer amateur football. It is professional football. And it's worse because it doesn't have the safeguards, the policies, the rules in place, the rules of engagement. So everybody knows what's going on. It is, people keep saying it's the Wild Wild West. It's worse than the Wild Wild West. And when we have players not show up for practice in college, holding out, wanting more money, I mean, I almost want to jump to the college side and help one of these universities because it's a mess.
Is that I don't want to put you in a position as if you're right there with the quarterback from Tennessee or with the Tennessee football program, but just with in your expert opinion, I mean, a lot of people are vilifying the player. I mean, is that totally fair?
I actually think it is.
Okay.
I think I'm taking Tennessee side on this. They have an integrity in that program that would be breached and violated if they bent over for their quarterback and paid him $4 million a year when he agreed to play for like 2.4. And once you open up that can of worms as a program, now you've got the running back coming in and knocking on the door wanting more money. Then you got the receiver and the left tackle and everybody else. And you've lost, Josh Heupel has lost it. He's lost his program. So they had to, basically kick him off the team and allow him to go hit the portal and let him be somebody else's problem. Somebody else will be glad to pay him, and it won't matter what they pay him. It won't be enough because, I know more about that situation than I probably should allude to, but the family's crazy. And so why would you want the guy in your program anyway? He's not that great.
I know. Well, and from an outsider's perspective, that's what strikes so many people. And it's like, wait a minute, this is the guy. This is the guy that's, taking this this stand that we've never seen a college player do and holding out and everything. Like this is the guy. And yeah, a lot of people weren't, it's not Arch Manning, right? If it was Arch, then maybe it's received a little bit differently, but it is wild. And like you said, July 1st, it's going to get even more wild. So we'll see how that goes. So let's talk some pro football camp, Craig, because I know that you take a lot of pride in what you and Teddy do with this. And I know you admit that Teddy's the powerhouse. She's amazing and does a lot of stuff for this camp. But just talk about, I guess, the motivation, because obviously you're allowing some kids to join via scholarship, and there's all these things that you do. It's you want to get the kids there to be able to have this experience, to be coached by players who have played at the highest of levels of this sport and have that opportunity and not cut off access for everyone. That's a lot that you and Teddy have to undertake in order to make all that happen. Why do you keep doing it over so many years?
Well, 2025 is the 20th anniversary of pro football camp. And the last probably 10 years, we've been averaging about 350 young kids, boys and girls, that have attended the camp. And because of the community support, SISM, PT clinics, Shields, back east, Chewy's, all these people, Classic Homes, they've all supported our camp so that it's not our camp anymore. It's the community's camp. And this year, we are partnering with Colorado Springs Sports Corp to do a girls' version of a flag football camp. So the pro football camp this year is June 23rd to the 25th at John Venenzia for the boys. And some girls can come if they want to come. And there'll be pros there. And then 2 weeks before, June 9th to June 12th, we're going to have a girls' pro flag football camp for girls aged 10 to 18. It's the hottest sport on the planet. It's the hottest sport in the U.S. Is flag football for girls. And for all those girls' dads out there that want to, give their daughter an opportunity to compete in flag football, this is going to be it. And we're also going to have a flag football tournament at the end of the camp. So that's affiliated with the Rocky Mountain State Games. So guess what? The boys pro football camp is something that, we've been the pioneer of. But the girls flag football camp, we're just the facilitator. We've got people that are much more powerful than us. Even the Broncos are supporting it. Want girls flag football to be a thing. And we're going to help that happen by having our camp in June.
That's awesome. And when Teddy was on, she was talking about, kind of the impetus of the girls pro football camp, and just so organic. And that's what makes it so cool. It's just, and to your point, it wasn't even, not to say that it wasn't on your radar, you weren't familiar with the trends. Obviously you were, but to have other parties come in, approach you guys because of what you've been able to do with pro football camp and say, we'd like you to help us make this happen. That's just really cool. The community of Colorado Springs and Colorado as a whole coming together to make this happen. It's really, really cool. Profootballcamp.com is where you go. Get registered, either your daughter or your son, for these two camps. Again, the girls pro football flag football camp is June 9th through the 12th. And then the boys, or as Craig says, if you want to double dip with your daughter and she can attend both camps, that will be a couple weeks after that. Profootballcamp.com is where you go for all the information. Craig, this was a fascinating conversation. Thank you for the time. Thank you for what you and Teddy do with the pro football camp. And, give my best to the boys. Hope the boys are doing well. And we'll talk soon.
You got it, Ryan. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Craig Doman, longtime NFL agent. Of course, his sons have played professional football. Fascinating. I didn't realize, I had no idea about Craig dabbling in the world of NIL. And I think it is so telling the fact that he said that when he is an agent, and agents general, their whole job is about the player, right? Their entire job exists to serve the player, to get the player as much money as they can possibly get him, to get him to the situation he wants to go, all this kind of stuff. And here's him saying, yeah, look, I feel bad for the schools. That really tells you everything you need to know about what's going on right now. And as he points out, July 1st, it's going to get even nuttier. What happened in Tennessee is going to happen all across the country, because there are going to be players that are like, wait a minute, I don't get paid this much anymore. I'm gone. Craziness. ProFootballCamp.com, though. Nothing crazy about that. Just an awesome experience for your son or daughter to learn from players who have played at a high level in college, played in the NFL. Very cool stuff there. ProFootballCamp.com. We'll take a break and come back after this. Comedian Dusty Slay is bringing the Night Shift Tour to Pikes Peak Center on Saturday, May 3rd. Tickets available online at axs.com or in person at the Pikes Peak Center box office. I'll be giving away another pair of tickets, as I have and will all week, for Dusty Slay at the Pikes Peak Center, so be listening for that. But if you don't want to leave it to chance, axs.com or stop by the Pikes Peak Center box office. Great stuff from Craig Doman. Illuminating conversation when it comes to the NFL draft and even the world of NIL that he's starting to learn a little bit more about. And on the Instagram Live, Chris Braden, who, if you've been a longtime listener of the show, you would know that Chris and I used to host this show together. I have to give Chris credit. He checked in and was talking about how his girls chose the other football. And and Chris, you know this, if you're still listening or still watching, they made the right decision. But it does speak to how this and the girls flag football camp that Teddy and Craig are doing it's new, but just capitalizing and giving an opportunity for young girls that, 3 years ago, girls flag football was not even, it was being played, but it's along with all women's sports, it's exploding. I don't think Chris had the opportunity to put his girls in flag football and have them be able to play at the high school level and be able to compete like they do in all the other sports. But they chose correctly. And I have to give Chris credit because, I've been talking to Teddy and Craig, and we've been supporting the pro football camp for a number of years, but I really have to give him all the credit because he was the one that, brought it to my attention, brought it to our audience's attention on this radio station. And he's been a champion for that camp forever. I'm a Johnny-come-lately compared to him when it comes to pro football camp. So hope you're doing well, Chris. Thanks. Good to hear from you. I do want to get into the Shedeur Sanders controversy because this is not a little thing. It's not. What's going on right now is, I think, the first major misstep by Deion Sanders. And he is facing a lot of backlash from people that he does not want to receive backlash from. Talk about that next here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this Wednesday. Ryan Kaufman with you. You can watch the show live on our social media platforms. The handle, the same no matter what social platform you choose to watch on. It is at XTRA Sports 1300. The number, if you'd like to give your thoughts on the day's topics or potentially win Dusty Slay tickets and Switchbacks tickets. I'm giving away both today. 719-247-1313. You know, things like Ring of Fames, jersey retirements, I think those are very much for the people who are in deep with the team. Okay, if you're a fan of a team clear across the country, you're entitled to your opinion. Doesn't mean that your opinion is totally wrong, but it doesn't matter, if I can be a little bit blunt. It doesn't, because these things are not really for outside consumption. I mean, they will be, but it's really about the people. We can all have opinions on Nikola Jokic being the MVP. That's something that affects every, or I'll just make it a more apples to apples. The Pro Football Hall of Fame or the Basketball Hall of Fame or Major League Baseball, that impacts all of us. It's all of our Hall of Fames. Right? But a Ring of Fame, jersey retirement, that's a localized thing. You know, one of the big ones that I look at as a case in point, the Broncos have John Lynch in their Ring of Fame. No one from the outside world would look at that and says it makes any sense. But the Broncos did it for their own reasons. Right? And you can certainly say that Broncos fans love John Lynch. So it's for them. So that's why when there is so much blowback from inside or around the CU football program for, and again, we got to call it what it is. It's not number 12 that people are talking about. Some people may want to rope it in when they talk about, you know, time limits, like we should wait a little bit, the cooling off period, all of that kind of stuff. But this is about Shedeur and number 2. This is not about Travis Hunter. Okay, so we can omit Travis Hunter pretty much from most of the conversation because people aren't upset necessarily about him and his number. He won a Heisman Trophy, just like Rashaan Salam did. So at least from an individual accolade standpoint, there's some sort of an argument here. There's not really one, and that's the thing you have to get out of the way right off the top. For any metric that people use to determine someone's worthiness to have their number retired, Shedeur doesn't meet any of it. Doesn't meet any of it. And CU alumni, players from the football team, but also people that just went to the school and were big fans, maybe they're donors, them lashing out and criticizing the decision made by Deion Sanders. Because we also have to put it in its right context. This is a Deion Sanders decision. The people who have been in Boulder longer than Deion has had to know this would be a bad idea. But none of them have his ear, or at least have his ear in a way that they can talk him out of it. He had this thought in his head. He wanted to do this. And this is, in many ways, what CU signed up for. Is that Deion Sanders is going to do things his way. and he's going to do what he wants. And it's the job of the university, the job of the athletic department to do what they can to support him. That's the dynamic. And that's not a dynamic that's much different than many other college football programs. I'm not trying to say that this is the first time that you would characterize a head coach as having all-encompassing power. But sometimes you wield it in a way that you upset the wrong people. And to me, people who played at CU, people who donate to CU, people who are season ticket holders to CU, they matter in all of this. And if they're upset, that's a problem. And they'll talk about, Deion Figures, which is a good chance to stroll down memory lane a little bit. Deion Figures, who wore the number 2, was the one who picked off Rick Mirer to clinch the national championship for the Colorado Buffaloes. He is also a college football Hall of Famer. I don't know if that name registers with the casual fan, but he's somebody that made a huge play in one of the biggest games in Colorado football history. And for his career at CU, he's also been acknowledged as a college football Hall of Famer. So when there's somebody that has had that number that has meant a lot to the Colorado football program and is not getting his jersey retired, but Shedeur is, that's a problem in a lot of people's eyes. But I don't think this is about Deion Figures, because I have not heard one person in or around the Colorado football program that has campaigned for Deion Figures to get his number retired. That's not really what this is about. That's just a good point to bring up when presenting your case, is that, hey, there's someone who played in bigger games, starred in bigger games, meant more to the Colorado football program at its most important time, and was acknowledged as one of, and when you're a Hall of Famer, you're one of the greatest to ever do it. And Deion Figures is in the College Football Hall of Fame for it. When that guy is unworthy in some way, but Shedeur is, that doesn't add up. That doesn't make sense. But it's not about that. It's not about Deion Figures. What it's about is Deion Sanders not caring about the history of the program that he has inherited and showing little regard for that. Because in some way, Deion Sanders feels like what Shedeur has done for the Colorado football program is in some way one of the most important things that has ever happened. As if, and I think it's important to note what Deion Sanders has done. He put Colorado football back on the map. He put them back on the map. This is not some fledgling startup university and college football program. Yes, they have been irrelevant for a number of years, but they have a proud history and tradition. They have won at the highest level of college football. They have had other Heisman Trophy winners. Deion Sanders put this program back on the map, not on the map for the first time. And I don't think that he maybe completely understands that. I think that there's some part of Deion Sanders that has this timeline of before Coach Prime and after Coach Prime. And if it happened before Coach Prime, it's not relevant to him. It only matters what's going on right now. And I can't interpret this any other way. The only other possible thing, and it's giving Deion Sanders even less credit, is just flat out nepotism. Just flat out. And I don't want to misremember what Shedeur Sanders was to the Colorado football program, but it lasted 2 years and they went 13-12. I'm as big of a fan of his as anybody. So either he's thinking that what Shedeur has done is actually so important to the Colorado football program that it is worthy of this, or he's just flat out wanting to give his son this gift. And the former is actually better than the latter. This is, we could talk about banning Sean Keeler and not asking him any question. That was a misstep. Okay, this is, to me, the first all-out fight of the Coach Prime Colorado marriage. I don't think some people, I don't think even I completely understood the magnitude of what Deion Sanders was doing when that announcement came out. I don't think I understood it. But I do now. People are hot about this. This is not eye-rolling. This is, people are flat out angry about what Deion Sanders has done. And again, it's not about any one particular player, or it's not about Buffs fans or Buff alumni not liking Shedeur or whatever. That's not what this is about. This is not a, the comparison I would make, this is not WNBA players against Caitlin Clark. And I think that there's some people who are kind of making that, they're just hating on Shedeur because Shedeur is more popular or whatever the case may be than any of these former Colorado Buffaloes are. It's like, no, it's not really that case. It's not that anyone wanted to get into this, but let's look at the data here. Let's look at what these last two Colorado football teams have actually accomplished. Getting CU back to relevancy, 100%. Help their bottom line? Absolutely. Their biggest win was a home win against an unranked Nebraska team. And I hate to do that. I hate to do that because I don't want it, because Shedeur was a phenomenal player. And in many ways, he was a godsend to this program. They needed this. Everything that Deion has brought, including his son, to Boulder, they have desperately needed. And there is no one in the Colorado football program or has been a part of it that isn't grateful and isn't a fan of Deion or Shedeur. But this is a step too far. This is, at the very least, ignoring history of this program. At worst, it's spitting in its general direction. I don't care. And especially in college football, you care very much about a coach sitting up there and embracing the history and almost saying that he wants to win for the university, right? There hasn't been a ton of that. Deion's been happy in Boulder, and he's worked his butt off in Boulder. But you start thinking about it, it's I don't know a lot of times that Deion Sanders has really embraced the past or talked about the proud tradition. And I'm sure there are clips. I mean, there are a lot of clips of Deion Sanders out there. I just can't recall a lot of moments where Deion Sanders is waxing poetic about the 1991 Colorado Buffaloes. And in college sports, you kind of like your coaches to do that. And it has never been a problem. But now this happens and you go, wait a minute. Is this about Colorado football or is this about Coach Prime? And this is now the story. Who cares about the quarterback battle on Saturday? Deion Sanders is going to have to answer questions about this. And I would be fascinated to hear what he has to say. The case that he's going to make for Shedeur. And I'm sure, I don't think Shedeur asked for this. So I'll leave him out of it. I don't think that he said, hey, Pops, on the way out, I'd like you to retire my jersey. I'll just put this on the shoulders of Deion Sanders and say he's got to explain it. Because this is the first big fight of this marriage. And it matters how this is handled. On both sides. Right? It can get ugly, and Deion Sanders all of a sudden can be looking around and going, what is going on here? But we have to be clear on who's in the right here. And I think it's the CU alumni that are in the right. And they're getting attacked and things. It's like, why? I mean, you can't argue that Shedeur is worthy of this. And it very much sends a message of Deion Sanders not caring a lot or paying much attention or mind to what has happened before he arrived in Boulder. It's like he's acting like the Carl Durrell era has been Colorado football this whole time. And look, he's a gifted wordsmith. And I'm not saying that this is going to ultimately drive these two sides apart. And I think Deion Sanders can smooth a lot of stuff over. Okay, but he's going to have to. Righteous indignation is not going to be the way to go here. You're going to have to make a case, and you're also going to have to speak to the very valid, I guess we'll call them concerns or complaints, coming from people who have supported this program up to and including the Deion Sanders era. We do still live in NIL. Some of these people are giving Deion Sanders the money to go out and get players. This is not something that you want to derail this relationship. It doesn't have to. It absolutely doesn't have to, but Deion's going to have to speak to this. Because the people that matter here, I can sit here and talk about how ridiculous it is that Shedeur Sanders is having his number retired. Paul Feinbaum in SEC country, or I saw Mad Dog Russo about this. It's one thing for them to do it. They have opinions on everything, like I have opinions on everything. But when Tyler Columbus and Chad Brown and people that I know that have ties to that program are speaking out and saying, we don't like this, and this is kind of a slap in the face to what Colorado football was before Deion Sanders got there, those are people you have to listen to. Those are people whose opinion truly matters in this. And Deion Sanders is going to have to speak to them. Take your thoughts on it. 719-247-1313. We'll stick with football. Coming up next, Ashton Genty says there is one NFL team that's been very heavy on him leading up to the draft. You'll never guess who it is. Well, I'm talking about it, so who do you think it is? That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Saturday, Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC is back at Widener Field. Well, actually, tonight they're at Widener Field for the U.S. Open Cup, if you're interested, looking for something to do tonight. But then back to league play on Saturday against El Paso Locomotive. Kickoff at 6 p.m. If you would like to be there, I have a pair of tickets for the 13th texter to text Switchbacks and your name to 719-247-1313 if you do not win your tickets or you need more than two. Switchbacksfc.com is the place to go. Ashton Genty mentioned in a recent interview that the Broncos have been, quote, heavy on him throughout this draft process. And a lot of people are starting to rekindle the conversation of whether the Broncos should draft Ashton Genty or should move up to draft Ashton Genty. I understand why the Broncos are, quote, heavy on him. He is the best running back in a draft class. And the Denver Broncos, if you had to pick out a true need for this football team, it would be running back. So do Joe, especially if you got to trade up to get Ashton Genty, right? You better be heavy on him. You better be doing your homework. You better be enamored with Ashton Genty to move up in the draft. So I'm actually not that surprised that Ashton Genty says this. Would I take Ashton Genty if he were available at 20? I've said this about the Denver Broncos. They have done so much right. And as long as they leave with a running back, I think that you can characterize their draft as a success because that's what they need more than anything else. But I said because of all the other work that they've done and the fact that they've, for now, gotten the quarterback position right, they can treat themselves. They can be a little indulgent, right? If they really love a player, even if he's at a position where they have other guys, go for it. You've earned this. This is a credit. This is an attaboy I am throwing at the Denver Broncos. Go ahead and indulge yourselves. If you love Ashton Genty, draft him. But I would still contend that it would be a little less indulgent, a little bit more, what's the word I want to use? Maybe a little smarter to exploit the depth at that position in this draft. It's not just Ashton Genty. It's not. It was like what happened to Omarion Hampton? 2 seconds ago, it felt like Omarion Hampton was not only going to be the Broncos' pick. The idea was that Omarion Hampton is closer to Ashton Genty than he is the next guy up. Like, people fell in love with Omarion Hampton like a week ago. What happened to that? Because I kind of believe that I'll at least say that I believe that Omarion Hampton has a better chance of being available at 20 than Ashton Genty does. What happened to that? But I still contend that, and I look at who the Broncos brought in the top 30 visit today. Travion Henderson. To me, Ashton Genty is the best running back in this draft. I will give him his due for that. But given what the Broncos are looking for in a running back, given the way that Sean Payton employs running backs or deploys them, both, I look at TreVeyon Henderson and I say he's kind of the total package. And he might be available at 50 or trading up in the second round. And look, man, maybe that becomes the Broncos guy and they take him at 20. Again, a little bit of a reach, maybe. But again, if you're the Broncos, indulge yourself. You've done good. Treat yourself. If you love TreVeyon Henderson so much, get him. I mean, it worked out for you with Bo Nix. Everyone thought you were reaching with Bo Nix. You loved him, and you got him, and it worked. So go ahead and do the same thing. But if the conversation is really, do you trade up to take Ashton Genty, or do you stick at 20? Given that TreVeyon Henderson exists and Omarion Hampton exists, I'm sticking at 20. And I'm going to take it one step further, and this is my own opinion about the draft. I'm not saying that the Broncos do this. I take something else at 20. I do, because I think there's a decent chance that they could end up with either Hampton or Henderson in the second round. One of the two. There's a good chance one of those two would be in play for them when day 2 of the NFL draft begins. And even if they're not, there's Henderson's teammate Judkins, who's very good. And I'll continue to bang the drum for Scattaboo and Devin Neal. That I think they can be impact running backs for the Denver Broncos. Now, can they have the impact of some of these other players? No, but that's part of the draft, right? You're not going to end up with Shedeur and Travis, Cleveland Browns. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe they will. But it's like you're not, maybe I should put it this way. You're not going to get Cam Ward and Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. Sometimes you're going to have to let a good player go by. The Titans are only going to be able to take one of those 3 guys, and they're going to have to let the others go. It's about your priorities. It's about the grades you have on these guys. I'm still somebody that thinks that the Broncos, and let's just keep it all in the Ohio State family. If the Broncos get Emeka Egbuka at 20 and come back with either Judkins or even better Henderson in round 2, man, they crush the draft. That's not just a successful draft. That's like borderline winning the draft. I'm not trading up to get Ashton Genty. If he's, and I'm talking about trading up significantly, right? You're gonna jump in, you're gonna give up what it takes to jump in front of the Bears. I'm not doing that. You know, to what Craig Doman, NFL agent who joined me in hour number 1, to one of the points he brought up, like this draft is more George Payton's thing than Sean Payton's. Right? When you're a GM, your favorite thing is the draft. And George Payton has shown that he's very good at it. And now he's got all his picks back. I mean, he squandered them on Russell Wilson. We all acknowledge that. And he had to spend more to fix his mistake and bring in Sean Payton and all that kind of stuff. But he's got him back. Don't you think he wants to use them? And I think George Payton can look at this draft at certain positions and go, man, I have a chance to really replenish the coffers here. If I play the board right and exploit the right position group at the right time, man, I could come away with multiple starters. I could come away with a couple of starters and a guy that would give us the ability to, not have to pay a Zach Allen. Some of those things are possible in this draft. Is giving that up for Ashton Jeanty worth it? I don't think it is. If he slips out of the top 10 and he's hovering around 15, I think it becomes a different conversation. But if the Broncos are going to take a swing up to the top 10, then you might as well keep going and see if you can't end up with Travis Hunter on your football team. Like, don't stop there. If they're going to trade into the top 10, what's another first round pick? Get up there and take Travis. To move up to 15, all right, I still don't do it. I think I would be perfectly content if I'm the Denver Broncos. If Ashton Jeanty is off the board and I'm sitting there at 20 and no other running backs have been taken, I think I would be elated. I'd be ecstatic. And maybe it's the gambler in me. I'd go, all right, well, they're all, except for Jeanty, available here. I mean, there can't be that many teams that take running backs. We're going to take Igbuka. Or Luther Burden. I understand why the Denver Broncos are very interested in Ashton Jeanty. And I think it would have to be, they would have to consider it. But trading into the top 10 to get him, I don't think that that's worth it with Travion Henderson and Amarion Hampton in this draft class. To say nothing of Judkins and Neal and Scattaboo and some of the running backs you can get even later. Here's one other thing, and it might be a little bit of a tinfoil hat. I may be giving Sean Payton exactly what he wants, and that's too much credit. I see that the Raiders are also been a team, and Ashton Jeanty was actually on the Rich Eisen show today and talked about the Raiders being another one of those teams that he's had a lot of contact with, that he feels like the Raiders are really thinking about taking him. I see the Raiders and I see the Broncos. And I think of what Sean Payton was talking about when he landed Bo Nix and some of the, I still think, kind of outrageous claims that he manipulated the entire draft. But what that does say is that Sean Payton wants to try and manipulate the draft. Could they be trying to do a bit of a smokescreen here, maybe to get the Raiders to take Jeanty? I'll say this. It wouldn't shock me if Jeanty ends up going to the Raiders and Sean Payton gets insert player name here and claims that he manipulated the Raiders into taking Ashton Jeanty. I'll at least say that. I don't know if that's actually what's going on here, but I wouldn't put past Sean Payton to claim that that's what he's doing. I don't do it. And for the record, if I'm the Raiders, I'm not taking Jeanty. I don't think Genty's worth the top 10 pick. Like, that's kind of what I'm getting at here. To trade up into the top 10 to take him, or to take him in the top 10. The first team that I look at and go, Yeah, I can see it, and I don't think it would be that crazy, is actually the Bears at 10. That's when I start to contemplate it. But I still am like, no, I don't think so. And I'm not trying to diminish Ashton Genty. He is the best running back in this class, but there are so many good ones. There's so many good ones. And if you tell me that Ashton Genty is so much better than everyone else, this isn't a Tyler Warren situation. Okay? If you want to talk to me about Tyler Warren, then we can have a conversation here. We want to talk about the Broncos moving up, indulging themselves a little bit. And you're talking Tyler Warren, then I'm all ears. Then I think we can come to an agreement. With Ashton Genty, I'm not. Because I don't think Ashton Genty is that far beyond everyone else in this draft class, like Tyler Warren is at the tight end position. And I also feel like you could be really happy and get everything that you want out of a second round running back in this draft with this group. And you can't do that with tight end. $8 days away. Where are you at with the Broncos? By the way, speaking of the draft, if you would like to represent your favorite team, Broncos excluded. Sorry, we're not going to pick one Bronco fan. I know who I'm speaking to and where I am located on the map. We're going to do that together. It's not going to be me. I'm going to make my case, but it's going to be, we're going to put the poll question up. You guys are going to vote on it. It's going to be a community, dare I say, communist decision. We're all going to get a say and decide. I actually think it's quite democratic. Why am I saying communist? Quite democratic way of doing it. But if you're a fan of a team not named the Denver Broncos and you would like to represent your team in our Drive Time Sports mock draft, that starts on Monday. Hit me up at 719-247-1313. I'll let you know. Spots are going fast, which is awesome. It's the whole point of this. 719-247-1313. Back after this. Who's been keeping up with the NBA play-in tournament? Nobody? Okay. I did watch Golden State Memphis. I thought that had a chance to be a really good game, and it was. And I was reintroduced to playoff Jimmy. Although in the play-in tournament, it's not technically the playoffs yet, so playoff Jimmy was aided by 18 free throws. But the end of that game, and Reggie Miller said it right as it happened, the same thing that I was thinking. We have another game where a team doesn't even get a shot off. That is inexcusable. Inexcusable. You have to be able, and look, if a team takes the ball from you, that's one thing. Neither the player for Houston nor the inbounder for Memphis got the ball taken from him. You just flat out messed up. And the Memphis inbounder didn't get the ball taken from him because he didn't get the ball in. He didn't try to pass it. In a 5-second violation. That is worse, I would contend, than what happened at the end of the national championship game. At least the Houston player did something, right? He went up like he was going to shoot, and then he didn't shoot, and then he's like, oh, crap, I can't touch this ball. And he just stood there helpless because he couldn't touch it. But you don't even get a shot off. You don't even get an inbound pass. Forget the shot. That's not what we're talking about here. That was the Houston, Florida game. You don't even get the inbounds pass off. You don't even pull an Anthony Carter. Remember Anthony Carter for the Denver Nuggets? The inbounds pass that was stolen away by the Lakers. Big turning point in that series back in the day. I think it qualifies as being back in the day. At least Anthony Carter passed the ball in. I mean, if that doesn't speak to how much of a unnecessary thing this play-in is, I don't know what does. So we get one game that you couldn't pay me to watch. And I know what you're thinking. Ryan, aren't you actually paid to watch sports? Not Orlando, Atlanta. There is no edict from my boss that I have to watch Orlando, Atlanta. In fact, I cleared it with him as I left work yesterday. I know you're paying me to watch sports, but I don't have to watch Orlando, Atlanta, do I? And he said no. Because inevitably I would call HR that I was being put in a hostile work environment by being forced to watch the Orlando Magic and Atlanta Hawks. But I did see that Trae Young made a complete fool out of himself at the end of the game. I did see that. Golden State Memphis was actually a compelling basketball game. But then it's like, it's almost like, I know Dallas and Sacramento are playing tonight, and I can't in good conscience say that especially Dallas, but even Sacramento deserves to be in the playoffs. But if you can't even throw in an inbounds pass at the end of the game, that tells me you shouldn't go to the playoffs. But it is a fitting, if they do end up getting past Dallas or Sacramento to get that 8th and final spot, it is a fitting way for their season to end because they have zero chance against OKC. I will give every underdog in the Western Conference a chance. I think Minnesota has a chance to beat the Lakers. I think the Clippers have a chance to beat the Nuggets. I think Golden State has a chance to beat the Houston Rockets. I'm not taking all of those lower seeds, but I'm just saying they all have a shot at winning. The only series that I am 100% positive on, and I don't think it will actually be that competitive, is OKC against whoever comes out of the play-in. That's just going to, like, Shea and company might be sitting there with like a week waiting for everyone else. Like, they might dust off their series in 4 and everyone else is going to 6 or 7. But if that wasn't bad enough, it gets worse tonight. Because last night we're supposed to be actual playoff teams, right? The 7 seed and the 8 seed. Under normal circumstances where Adam Silver doesn't have to contrive this in order to motivate teams to not give up late in the season and make his paying customers the tickets that they have not worth the paper they're printed on, which now that I'm saying it, they're not printed on paper anymore. So they are worth exactly the paper they're printed on. If Adam Silver didn't have to contrive all of this to get a little effort out of some of these teams at the end of the season, then it would have just been straight Golden State plays Houston and Memphis plays OKC. And I would have been fine with that. Because just the mere idea that the Dallas Mavericks have a chance to get into the playoffs makes me physically ill. If there is any team in the NBA that does not even deserve this kind of a shot to get in the playoffs, it's one run by Nico Harrison, excuse me. But Dallas has a chance. If they beat Sacramento tonight, and if they beat Memphis on Friday, they're going to play Oklahoma City. That is what's wrong with the play-in, among many other things. Dallas has a path to get in the playoffs. And we had a team that was unable to even inbound the basketball at the end of the game. Couldn't even inbound it. With the college, you know, I was talking to people were asking my reaction from the Houston, Florida game. I said, here's the thing, and I'm not trying to be mean here, but we have to understand that college basketball is not as good as the NBA. I'm not talking about the product. I'm talking about the skill level. Like, the thing about college sports is these guys just screw up. They're not the machines that are at the NBA level. Like, you just get those kind of things that happen at the end of Houston, Florida sometimes. Actually, college basketball is rife with those kind of, but you understand it because it's that level of college basketball. We don't have to, in the NBA, we make it, oh, it's great. No, the guy just screwed up. The guy just messed up. Because he's going to become like an accountant or something like that. Like, not all of these people are bound to share the stage with Nikola Jokic and LeBron James. And part of it is because they make those kind of mistakes. But what's the excuse for the guy on Memphis? What's his excuse? He's in the league. Abolish the play-in. I could have watched something else last night and been just as content. But no, I watched the play-in. 719-24-7-1313. The 3 stories that are driving the show coming up next. Hello there. Welcome in. Drive Time Sports on this gorgeous Wednesday in Colorado Springs. Glad to have you, whether you're listening to the show, watching the show, or doing a combination of the two. Plenty of ways for you to do it on air, online, through the app, or on our social media platforms. 719-247-1313 is the number if you would like to interact with the show. I will be giving Dusty Slay tickets away a little bit later this hour as we continue to just buy time. Not buy time, we want to sell it. We want time to go faster so we can get to the Nuggets and Avs in the playoffs. And by the way, if you're an Avalanche fan, you will appreciate this. We'll get to what's driving the show here in a minute. Got an email, got a press release that the mayor of Denver wants to celebrate the fact that the playoffs are beginning for both the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche by inviting the mascots from the two teams, delegation from both franchises, to somewhere in downtown. I didn't really pay attention to where, to commemorate the occasion by unveiling a giant basketball. Let me say that again. In order to celebrate the start of the playoffs for the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche, who are perhaps best known for not playing with a basketball, the mayor of Denver is going to unveil a giant basketball. What is this basketball made out of, you may ask? It is made of fiberglass. I mean, what did you expect? To be Swarovski crystals? You could tell how cultured I am. It's made out of fiberglass. It's 5 feet tall. To commemorate the start of not just the basketball playoffs, the hockey playoffs. And you know, if you're an Avalanche fan, you already get it. I don't have to explain it. And I get it. At the risk of explaining it, it's going to make it less funny. But for those who are perhaps the uninitiated, for a very long time, the Avalanche have been kind of viewed as little brother. You know, the Cronkies tended to dote on the Nuggets a little bit more than the Avalanche. The Avalanche were just kind of left to their own devices, kind of like the dynamic in my household growing up. I was the Avalanche, even though I was the oldest brother, right? My two younger brothers were doted on, more attention to them. I was left in the wilderness to fend for myself. That's why I turned out this way. But it is kind of perfect. Let's go Avs. Here's a giant basketball. With Bernie right there, too. Bernie's going to be standing right there. What's he going to do with the giant basketball? I know dogs and, rubber balls or whatever, it's very popular, but Bernie prefers pucks. Can you do both? It's made out of fiberglass. Can you not mock up a 5 foot tall fiberglass hockey puck? Like both? So that's happening. Now, speaking of the Avalanche, see? No little brother, no second-class citizens here. Colorado Avalanche, not only included in the 3 stories that are driving the show, they're leading it. All right. As I said, Avs leading off. Here's Avalanche GM Chris McFarland on the importance of Valeri Nichushkin.
His importance is vital. In terms of the off-ice stuff, I got the utmost confidence and faith in Val. I think he's done a great job and look forward to having successful playoffs here.
Look, There's a lot to talk about with this series, and I have over the course of the program. I think this is going to be the ultimate test of Chris McFarland's vision for this hockey team and the vision for the trades that he made. Last year, this was a series that had 4 games that were 1-goal games with 5 minutes to go. 2 of them ended up going into overtime. This was as close of a series as you could possibly get. And in the end, the Colorado Avalanche did not have everything at their disposal when it comes to trying to score goals, right? And Chris McFarland's vision is we got to get more guys that attack the net front, that will get in the dirty areas and score those goals, because it could be a redirect. It could be a rebound. We're not going to camp out at the blue line and just slap wristers or have wristers or slappers on Jake Ottinger. We got to get in his kitchen. I think a lot of these moves that he made, he had the Stars in mind. But one guy that also helps him carry out that vision is Valeri Nichushkin. And for all of the things that the Avs did or did not have last year, we have to be honest here. Not having Valeri Nichushkin was right up at the top of the list. I think that the Stars would have still probably won the series, but it ended when it did. And it certainly, there was no path forward for the Avs to win once that whole situation happened. So I'm sure that the Avalanche would much rather the attention be on Gabriel Landeskog and people asking questions about his availability. But let's be real here. The guy that's going to be more impactful on the Avs playoff run is Valeri Nichushkin. And I'm sorry, and I said it when all of this happened and when it looked like he was going to be back with the team, I said, during the regular season, it's not going to matter. We're not going to really talk about it that much. But when the playoffs roll around, it's going to become a story. It might become the story. And in a world without Gabriel Landeskog, it probably would be the story. It's not unfair to wonder what his status is going to be as the playoffs go on. And I hope that it becomes a non-issue, because I know that Chris McFarland thinks the world of this guy, and that's why they've stuck with him like they have. And I hope that his and the organization's faith in support of Valeri Nichushkin is paid back tenfold by Valeri Nichushkin helping the Colorado Avalanche win a Stanley Cup. But it is not an out-of-line question to wonder what's going to happen with Valeri Nichushkin as these playoffs go on, because it's happened the last 2 years. If they got him, cool. Now we're talking about Chris McFarland's vision and whether it's good enough to beat the Stars and whether it's good enough to win a Stanley Cup. Without him, we're done here. And I think Chris McFarland has made that very clear when he was okay with trading away Mikko Rantanen, but did not want to get rid of Valeri Nichushkin. You could talk about an equal value thing. I think it has a lot to do with the type of player Valeri Nichushkin is and how Chris McFarland sees his value to this organization. So we could talk about Gabe. We could talk about goaltending. We could talk about Brock Nelson and everything else. Valeri Nichushkin is part of this. And every game that goes by, we get closer to the time where the Avs got burned the last couple of years. And the wonder from people is going to go up a little bit. People are going to wonder a little bit more. And I don't think it's not their fault. But Chris McFarland, utmost confidence that Valeri Nichushkin is ready to go. And if you've watched this guy since he's come back, You get it. You get it. As much as you want to take a stand and say, no, you fool me once, fool me twice, that whole thing. You saw him back on the ice and you're like, damn, they need this dude. I get it. I get it. But that's not to say that it's not risky. Here is story number 2.
Howard feeds Henderson, running straight ahead. Henderson now angles out to the right, to the 20 of the Volunteers, to the 10, to the 5, and into the end zone. A touchdown. 30-yard run for Travion Henderson.
Paul Keels from Learfield. Why am I playing last year's highlight of Travion Henderson running against the Tennessee Volunteers? Well, I'll tell you why. Because it is relevant today with one draft prospect in Ashton Genty talking about how heavy the Broncos are on him and the fact that they're welcoming Travion Henderson to Dove Valley for their top 30 meetings. And therein lies one of the more interesting dilemmas facing the Denver Broncos going into this draft. There is nobody on planet Earth that doesn't believe that the Denver Broncos have got to leave next week with a difference-making running back. But who is that, and how far are the Broncos willing to go? Because if you told me that the Broncos are going to have to trade up, which I don't believe that Ashton Genty will be there at 20. Who's going to take him before the possible landing spots? I don't think that the Broncos can just sit there at 20 and have Ashton Genty fall into their lap. If he does, cool. But if you told me that the Broncos could just sit at 20 and get Travion Henderson, even better yet, that the Broncos could take someone else at 20 and get Travion Henderson on day 2, or heck, late night day 1, that's much more intriguing. I am not if I'm the Denver Broncos. With this group, and it's not just that there are many good running backs. The other running backs in this class are outstanding. This is as good of a crop of running backs as we've seen in years. And Ashton Genty, to his credit, is the best of them. But there's not the separation between Ashton Genty and Amarion Hampton, or Ashton Genty and Travion Henderson, that there is from Tyler Warren to every other tight end. If the Broncos are going to trade up, and especially trade up very high to potentially land somebody, it better be a Tyler Warren, or it better be a Travis Hunter or an Abdul Carter. I don't think it makes sense for the Broncos to give up a ton of draft capital and move up and get Genty when they can stay at 20. And I'm even of the mind that they should get, Luther Burden, or if the wide receiver from Arizona, McMillan, falls to him, or Egbuka, I'd look there and I get a running back. And I like Travion Henderson a lot. His teammate Judkins, pretty good too. Maybe I'm falling in love with the cult of Cam Scattaboo's personality, but I think he'd be good in a Broncos uniform. He's not as good as Henderson, Judkins, Genty, Hampton, but the Broncos have options. They have the ability to get something else and then get a running back instead of giving up a bunch of other stuff to go get Ashton Genty. I don't believe in Genty that much when you have the other running backs in this draft class, like Travion Henderson and like Amarion Hampton. But Travion Henderson in for a top 30 visit, and Ashton Genty says, Broncos, heavy on him. Story number 3 from the world of college football, and I don't have a clip of this, but I would expect to have a clip of this next week. And that clip would be of Deion Sanders explaining himself. This story of him retiring Shador's number is getting bigger by the nanosecond. And more CU people, the stakeholders. That's the best way to put these people, the stakeholders. The alumni, the donors, the players that, not to sound too, romantic about football, but that bled and sweated for the Colorado football program. They're mad. Because what this shows, what this seems like, and I'm willing to hear Deion Sanders out on this, but what this reeks of is I pay no mind to the tradition of this program. The tradition of Colorado football is from the minute Deion Sanders walked onto campus. And so why wouldn't he look at Travis Hunter and especially Shador and say, of course they should be retired? I mean, in Deion Sanders' mind, Colorado football started the minute he stepped onto campus. These are the vibes that he is giving out. Shador Sanders should not have his number retired. It was a bad decision. But the people whose opinion I think truly matter here are really upset about it. And this is the first major, like the Sean Keeler thing. Like, trust me, the same, it's not. It was, I think, the first misstep from Deion Sanders, but it's nothing compared to this. This is the first all-out fight of the marriage between Deion Sanders and the Colorado football program, because I believe that it is Deion Sanders and Deion Sanders alone who made this decision. And if there was anybody in and around the university that had his ear, they would, I'm sure, talk him out of it. I'm sure of that. That's just the power that Deion Sanders wields now. Which, look, you take the good with the bad, right? The guy has done a lot of good for this program. But that's not to say that you can just sit idly by if you think that he's completely disregarding the history of that program that has been a proud program. Deion Sanders put CU football back on the map. He didn't put it on the map for the first time. To disregard that history and basically say what Shador did is one of the greatest things that has ever happened to Colorado football, right alongside Travis Hunter winning the Heisman. I mean, there's just no justification for that. And Saturday, when that spring game happens, I know it was supposed to be a joyous affair and about the quarterback competition, all this stuff. It is not about any of that anymore. They might as well not even do the spring game and just get to a press conference. He must answer to this. He must justify this. And he has to smooth this over. I think they're going to agree to disagree on whether Shador deserves this honor or not, but you got to speak to that. You got to make people understand that you do appreciate the history of Colorado football, and then make your case why Shador, who led a team that went 13-12, is somehow worthy of immortalization right along with an associate justice of the Supreme Court and 2 Heisman Trophy winners and other multiple-time All-Americans. CU doesn't do this a lot. And it's not because they don't have a proud tradition. It's because this is an honor that is supposed to be saved for only the best of the best that have accomplished things, that have brought accomplishments to the more, and I hate to sound like Dan Lanning here, but more clicks and more NIL money and more national television games is not the accomplishment that you immortalize somebody with. It's you give credit and you understand the importance of that. It just doesn't rise to this level. And I think that Deion Sanders has to speak to this. He has to answer to it. I don't think he's going to bend on this, but he has to at least acknowledge that people are very upset. People that matter are very upset, and he has to speak to them. And we'll see if he does between now and Saturday. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. Your chance to win tickets to see Dusty Slay, very funny comedian at the Pikes Peak Center, is coming up next. Congratulations to Jeff, who won the pair of tickets to see Dusty Slay at the Pikes Peak Center on May 3rd. More chances for you to win this week. I also want to shout out Bill, who won the Switchbacks tickets earlier, because they're winners, and they deserve to be mentioned. I don't tell you their last name because I don't want them to get the attention that would come along with that, and you would, be finding them and they'd be getting hounded for the tickets. And I don't want to put Bill and Jeff through that, but they do get acknowledgement as being winners. Today's big winners. You could be a big winner tomorrow. Maybe that's why I should just make this show. Just get a bunch of giveaways and then just everybody win things. I would if I could. I mean, I'd like nothing better than to go contest, sports take, contest, sports take, content, but doesn't always happen. Headline, ESPN hack who said that the Nuggets resting Nikola Jokic is why Adam Silver has the load management policy, has decided that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is his MVP. Shocker. Tim Bontemps, who called out the Nuggets. Remember that? He called out the Nuggets for Nikola Jokic resting. And he was resting. He had a legitimate injury, but Nikola Jokic plays through almost everything. They were resting him. Okay? The guy plays pretty much every game, every season for the better part of a decade. Okay? It's okay for LeBron to get load managed for, I don't know, how long was LeBron gone? Like 3 weeks from the Lakers? I mean, I hate to always go to him, but they love him. And so it's the easy place to go. I get load management. It's not my favorite thing. And it can go too far, but I understand it. And there are occasions where you go, not going to make a big fuss about it. For Tim Bontemps to do that a few weeks ago was wild. Like what, Nikola Jokic? You're accusing him of being one of these. Kawhi Leonard showed up a week ago. What's been going on with Kawhi all this time? And not just Kawhi this year, like Kawhi every year since he won a title. And you're going after Jokic? That's the line in the sand? How dare Nikola Jokic get a night off? So that guy's voting for SGA. Stunned. Floored. SGA is going to win. And you know what? I don't want to do the SGA is a worthy MVP. Not the most worthy, but a worthy MVP. And good on him. But the last people that I'm going to look at and go, oh, maybe I was wrong about Nikola Jokic deserving the MVP is anybody that works for the four-letter network. But I don't want that to sully what is actually a significant day. And it's my fault that I did not recognize this sooner. A day of this magnitude deserves, and you know me, I'm not a big special occasion guy, not big into holidays, but this one is different. This is a significant anniversary. Happy Hatch Day to Dinger. On this day, back, I don't know, umpteen years ago, I sat there in Mile High Stadium and watched in abject horror as a dinosaur emerged from an egg that was found, allegedly, under the ground of the stadium side for Coors Field. I watched in abject terror A dinosaur. You know how dangerous those things are? And the Rockies are just like, hey, guess what? We found a dinosaur. Well, first they actually said they found a dinosaur egg. And I thought, surely there's not a live dinosaur in there. I have been led to believe by the public school system that dinosaurs, even ones in eggs, became extinct millions of years ago. So I actually thought, oh, neat. They found a dinosaur egg. Wow, that's a big dinosaur egg, and it happens to be purple. That's interesting. And then, like, part of it broke. And I'm watching in the stands. And I'm clutching at my father's arm that a dinosaur is emerging from this egg. Because I know that, and then it's a triceratops, but it doesn't matter because triceratops are still dangerous. Just because they eat plants does not mean that they won't stab you with one of their horns or trample you. And everyone just cheered as a dangerous prehistoric creature emerged onto the baseball field at Mile High Stadium. And then they had the audacity to try and tame it. I don't know why. It's actually a traumatic anniversary. I don't know why that I made it sound like it was like a fun anniversary. This is, and he's just roaming around at Coors Field. No leash. No, who's the Star-Lord? No Star-Lord to like corral him like he does the Raptors. He just walks around. You know, I remember, and this is in all seriousness because obviously the whole Dinger thing was quite staged, and I was wise to it even at my young age. But I do remember a time where Dinger was the most laughable thing about this organization. I remember when Dinger was the worst thing about this organization. And then the Rockies proceeded to not score runs in all but 3 of their last 45 innings. Oh, but trust me, I'm well aware that the decline has been happening for a while. Dinger has not been the worst thing about the Colorado Rockies for a long time. I am fully aware of this. I'm just saying I'm old enough to remember when he was the worst thing about this organization. Is Dinger the worst mascot in sports? I'll hang up and listen. I really don't like Gritty. I made that very clear over the years. I'm not a fan of his antics on social media. But I still think he's probably better than Dinger. But yep, today. Man, the hits just keep on coming. Celebrating the anniversary of one of the worst mascots ever conceived. Or I should say, because he's dying, contrived. After the announcement of perhaps the worst alternate uniforms I've ever seen, on the heels of some of the worst baseball that I have witnessed in my life. So it's been quite the couple of weeks with the Rockies. And again, I suffer for my art. I will keep up with what's going on and report back to you so you don't have to go through it. But happy birthday, Dinger, you purple SOB. On that note, I do want to thank Craig Doman for joining me. Thank you to you for your patronage and your interaction. I do want to leave you with something that is, all joking aside, like serious, but I think it's a good thing for you. If you're a man over the age of 40, you may have noticed that you are struggling with low energy. Maybe you just chalk it up to, I'm not feeling myself. Low T Center's testosterone replacement therapy could be the solution. Get started today. Visit one of their conveniently located clinics, meet a medical provider, get back to feeling your best. And in the month of April only, consultation free. So now there's really no excuse to put it off. Treatment is tailor-made just for you, and it's covered by most major insurance. Get treated at one of their centers or even from home. Talk to them about that when you go in for your free consultation. Why wait? Book your appointment now, lowtcenter.com. That's lowtcenter.com. We have made it. We are one day closer to the Avs and Nuggets starting the playoffs. In fact, we actually may know the playoff schedule for the Avs and Stars tonight. We'll check back in tomorrow at 3 here on Extra Sports 1300.